So I'm here with my good pal, Professor John McManus, and John and I are over here in Normandy at the moment. We've just been in a cafe in Bayeux, a back street of in the Rue Saint-Jean, I should say. And I've just been to the Tapestry for the first time ever. I'm a bit embarrassed to say that I've never been there before. But boy, that's impressive, isn't it?
Absolutely. Been there a number of times. I think the key to enjoying the Tapestry is if there's not a big crowd.
Yep.
If there's a big crowd, then you can't see anything.
Diddly squat.
Yeah.
So we were in. I think we were first draft in this morning, so it was pretty clear.
You got there at the right time.
And had this fantastic English commentator on my little handpiece that they give you, who was really old school thespian. Which actually kind of added to it. And you have the little sort of, sort of lutesome things in the background, which I kind of thought actually rather added to it. But I was really, really impressed. And of course, that's an invasion going the other way around.
Yeah, exactly.
Going back across the channel. but our business this week is the invasion of the 6th of June. And you've just written about this on The Dead and Those About to Die. The amazing book about the Big Red One, the 1st Infantry Division on Omaha Beach.
Yeah.
So kind of what made you kind of go for that? Well, I mean, it's such an iconic part of America's history, isn't it?
It is. It's right up there with Gettysburg, Bunker Hill, Yorktown. I mean, you name it. When Americans think of war, they often think of Omaha Beach.
Of course.
They think of Normandy and they think of Omaha Beach. But what occurred to me is that, as iconic as the battle was, most of the American fixation had been on the 29th Division, the Rangers, especially after Private Ryan.
Because that's showing the kind of western end of the beach, where because they're Tom Hanks and co are Rangers, right?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously that's important, but what's interesting about it is that popular history was following the original military history, because what I found is the original combat historians documented reams of stuff from the 29th and the Rangers, and I'm talking like 400, 500 pages of after-action, interview stuff from the survivors.
I've read a number of those, and you're right, there's a lot more on the 29th Infantry than there is the 1st Infantry.
Yeah, the 1st Infantry, they had 83 pages.
Right.
So...
And how many pages on the 29th Rangers?
Easily 450 plus.
So why is that?
I think it's just happenstance. Force Pogue happened to run into the 29th Division guys, and Force Pogue, of course, was the great original combat historian who has, ironically, the first conversation with John Spaulding, one of the key Big Red One guys.
Right.
But, the 29th, I guess, was just more accessible for whatever reason. Yep. I really don't know why, but I know that subsequent history kind of followed that. And so as I thought about it more from studying it, actually for decades, is I thought, well, if there's anything that isn't as known as it ought to be about the American experience at Omaha Beach, it's the Big Red One.
Right.
Because James. I mean, it's like when you do a book, you don't want to just recapitulate what someone else has written. And
no, if you're not saying something new, there's no point in doing it.
Exactly.
Whilst at the same time, you don't want to be kind of revisionist for revisionist sake. You want to say something because you've got something you want to get off your chest. I think. Well, that's certainly how I approach it.
Yeah, exactly. Something that's going to add, a new perspective. And I thought if we can, the Big Red One will allow us to do that. And the cool thing was there were so many other sources.
Right.
So the original combat interviews, you don't see a whole lot.
No.
But the company morning reports, the after action stuff, it's just a really rich vein.
Right.
And as I got deeper into this, I felt that I can really bring this to life for the average soldier from the ground up, and maybe make some attempt to try and come to terms with what actually happened. That's hard when you're reconstructing combat history.
Yep.
But it was incredible.
Well, I don't think anyone's done it better in trying to recreate the experience of the American soldier in World War II landing on D-Day. I think you've absolutely nailed it, I've got to say. And I should add that what you've very cleverly done is you followed a large number of individuals as their experiences on that day, and I know where I'd go for that. I presume you're going to the Big Red One Museum and Archive up near Chicago Way. Carlisle Barracks, I guess, because the U.S. Army Heritage Center in Carlisle Barracks, which is in Pennsylvania, which is just a hop and a skip away from about 15 miles away or so from Gettysburg.
Right.
And it's quite nice because what I've done in the past is you fly into Washington D.C., you hire yourself a car and you go off and you stay in Gettysburg because it's nice and old world and all the rest of it. It's quite fun,
awesome.
and do the daily commute to Carlisle.
Yeah.
And they have amazing numbers of oral histories, don't they?
They do, and they have surveys, like questionnaires that gave veterans over the decades, and so those are great. Plus, personal papers collections that people had. Anybody who's remotely relevant to the story That, in addition to, like you said, the Cantini First Division Museum in outside of Chicago.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, see, everyone tells me this. I've never been there, but I've heard
so
it's
awesome. You've got to go.
Well, next time I'm up there.
US. I highly recommend it next time you're in the U.S. From a museum point of view, because it's just been reopened to incorporate the 21st Century Wars.
Yep.
But also from an archival point of view.
Really? So
no matter what you're working on, there's probably something. It's not just Big Red One, because the Big Red One is so involved in so many different events throughout modern history that you're going to find something there. In my case, I stayed there for weeks. And they were really helpful. I was able to just immerse.
Wow.
So anything that it's just anything we could dig up. The historian there, Andrew Woods, of course, is incredibly conversant on all this stuff.
Okay.
And so working with him, just bouncing stuff off each other. But what amazed me too is that where I live is St. Louis, Missouri, which is in the heart of the country, and there's a branch of the National Archives there called the National Personnel Record Center, which has the company morning reports. Yeah, so that's a great source from D-Day.
Is it?
It's amazing.
But presumably for all campaigns.
It depends how much the clerk could write. You've got every unit company morning report, of course, but there could be some days, like in the middle of the Hurtgen Forest or something, that they hardly documented anything, but they would document, except coming and going, casualties or whatever. But I'm talking about descriptions of what happened on D-Day. And I'm talking about from a very good, immersive kind of point of view.
Yeah.
From many or most of the rifle companies and other units too. So the Cantini First Division Museum did not have that stuff. So I got it all, and and as a token of my incredible gratitude to them, I gave that to them, so that they would now have that, forever. So it was kind of a partnering effect in that regard. But I found out some really cool stuff there, in terms of like what they were thinking at the time and what it looked like a day or two after in their minds.
Let's talk about that.
They're talking about of course, the chaos. They're talking about the plan going awry. They're talking about the tides constantly. Tides swept us here. They swept us there. And so...
So real frustration about landing in the wrong bit.
Oh, my God, yeah. Exactly. They're landing in the wrong place, the tide problems, of course, the opposition. There was an attempt to summarize what happens with the company. Right. Yeah.
But how much do you think that kind of those guys landing in the wrong place? How much does that, in the big scheme of things, does it really matter?
I think it really did matter. Yeah, because the whole plan is designed so that they're all coming ashore at the same time in a kind of combined arms way. You just overwhelm the Germans with targets and firepower.
Right.
Instead, they're landing piecemeal.
Okay, so they can be taken off in penny packets.
Exactly, and they're landing in the worst spots.
Because there's definitely weaker spots defense-wise.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. And yet, two of the companies, E and F Company, 16th Infantry, land right underneath WN-62, of course.
Yeah, which is not a good one.
That's just a kill zone.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And so the fact that there's anybody even alive to tell... But the other thing that's kind of staggering when you look at these morning reports is the long list of casualties. So you've got 75 to 80% casualties in E and F Company.
Right.
And, a number of them at that point are listing as MIA. So then you go a few days later, and you may get the confirmation of KIA, maybe some of them at the hospital. I mean, who knows? Most of them are dead.
Yeah.
So that really does bring it home to you. So what I tried to do is document through there and the other sources exactly whether someone was killed or not, where this would have happened, whatever circumstances we got. It was quite a bit of micro history doing. Okay, let's find out where this was and who this guy was, and that was pretty rewarding on a personal level to maybe bring these guys to life again. So there was that. But the other interesting thing too, the Eisenhower Library in Abilene has some really good material as well. And an example I'd give you is there was a young lieutenant who was with one of the first waves, and he wrote this very expansive letter home to his family, like maybe a week later after D-Day or something, and he really wanted to get it on the record while it was fresh in his mind. You got that sense.
Yep.
And I don't think that anybody had
ever seen
used that, and it really did help me understand a little bit better what had happened at Easy Red in the early hours. His name was Lieutenant Rob Hutch, I think Huch, and it was a really well written letter.
Right.
So he was writing about the Battle of Normandy, but then he was sort of retrospecting on other D-Day stuff that occurred to him too. So it was more than just one. The first letter was amazing. others follow on. It was like, oh yeah, this, that.
Oh,
that
right. So as he's remembering other things, other things.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, what's the overall impression you're getting about this? I mean, obviously, the Americans prevail, and actually, by mid-morning, I know there's counterattacks, I know there's firing still going on, but the position, the German position, is starting to crumble fairly early on. But there are obviously these outposts which are incredibly tough nuts to crack.
Yeah,
what are you left with? Are you left with one of sort of just unending admiration for what they did, or is it? I mean, obviously, I'm sure that goes without saying, but is it more than that? I mean, what do you think the training was up to it? For example,
I do think the training is a major reason why they succeed.
Prevails.
They have a muscle memory. Partially, about 50% of them are combat experience. There's a unit culture of, okay, this is how we take care of small unit actions. This is what happens when, the top 3 guys get killed or wounded, and now we got to improvise. There is a culture of improvisation that I think definitely helps at Omaha Beach. So one of the big takeaways, of course, the admiration. Yeah, like you said, goes without saying. But what stuck out to me, and I have a whole chapter entitled this, shock.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways you can break down that word. Physical shock, emotional shock, mental shock, all of that together, creating this situation of extreme crisis point. And though I'm no expert on the medical side or the psychological side, but it does get you into that world a bit because, this has kind of physical symptoms when people are in that kind of crisis mode. And so then you can interpret some of what's happening there on that basis. People frozen behind an obstacle. The tunnel vision. Vessels are constricting. You don't have as much blood flow to your eyes then. And your heart is going bananas.
Right.
And there's a paralysis effect that's created by this element of fear. And you're seeing that in many of these guys.
Yeah.
In addition to
bowels are emptying and all that kind of stuff.
Or the opposite. And that's, so I would say emptying probably for about 20% or so.
Right.
But the more common reaction is constipation, clench up, that kind of queasy fear in the gut, and just the pucker effect, that kind of thing. I mean, and so though I'm just giving you a rough estimate. Maybe there are some whose bowels evacuate who don't admit to it.
Right.
But there were some who mentioned it. But also there were some who testified to this idea that it was almost hard to move their limbs. Because there was that sense of paralysis by fear. The condition black.
Condition black. That's what.
Condition black.
Condition black.
Yeah, which basically means an extreme crisis point. It's like redlining a vehicle or something like that. That's for a human being.
So I remember talking to a U.S. Army Ranger called Bing Evans, Warren Bing Evans, and he was in North Africa, and then he was at Gela in Sicily, and then subsequently in Italy as well. He was captured before he got back to England to be in the D-Day landing. So he wasn't a D-Day. But we were talking about the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan, and he said actually he thought as a depiction of kind of the chaos of landings and stuff in war, it was pretty good. I mean, we know there are some historical inaccuracies of it and all the rest of it, and we know it wasn't totally across the board on Omaha Beach, etc. Yeah. But he said there's a bit where Tom Hanks' character goes into a kind of, he can't hear, and he goes into a bit of tunnel vision, and he said, I've had that experience. He said I was absolutely, he said when he watched that, his blood went cold because he absolutely could relate to that experience.
Absolutely, and you know what that is? It's called acoustic trauma. And I know that because my wife is an audiologist.
Right.
Very familiar with that. So it was really cool because I asked her about that scene in relation to some of my research with the Big Red One guys, because some had told me about that or had written about that experience.
Yep.
And she said, that's acoustic trauma, which basically means
your brain is just shutting stuff out.
Yeah, because of the concussion and the noise and all that. It's what later leads to tinnitus and issues with your hearing loss and whatever. Yeah. Tinnitus is the constant ringing in the ears.
Of course,
Yeah, so what you're getting at that point is just this kind of paralysis in your ears, too, and a wooziness. And again, it's the same as the other senses. It's happening to a lot of these Big Red One guys. In addition, of course, you have all the physical components of this, how cold you are from the water, seasick that you might be.
And don't forget, you've just not slept for 2 days. Exactly. I mean, if you have, it's been really snatched cat naps. Yeah, you've been bucked around on a kind of rough sea. People have been vomiting and all the rest of it. You're cold, you're drenched. Yeah. Then you come to this hell of bullets. And one of the things I've repeatedly pointed out is, MG-42s, for all their kind of terror, also come with a whole host of problems if you're manning them, overheating and all the rest of it, and lack of accuracy, etc., etc. The fact that you've got to have all these spare barrels, the fact you've got to carry all this ammo, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't get away from the fact that when you're landing on that beach, you're up against a weapon that can fire 23 bullets a second.
Right.
And that can cut you in half. I mean, it's just horrific. And if you're suddenly coming out of that water and there's all around you, you can totally understand why you would be completely and totally discombobulated.
Absolutely.
I mean, the key is clearly just to keep moving, isn't it? I mean, you've just got to get your ass off that beach.
Which is the last thing maybe you can do or want to do.
Yeah.
Because the other thing, too, is you're carrying so much stuff. And you're almost punch drunk from all this. And as I said in the book, it's like, they needed to land like rabbits. Instead, they're tortoises. And they're staggering around punch drunk, and so they're more vulnerable. Yeah. And if there's ever a time when an MG42 can reach its max capacity, it's here in a fixed position where the ammo's already there.
Yeah, where the range isn't actually that massive in the big scheme of things.
Yeah.
And it's just, you've got sitting ducks, haven't you?
Yeah, especially under WN62 in that heart of easy red sector there. And but the other thing, too, is I think the most powerful weapon the Germans have is their inland artillery. So if Lieutenant Frerking, their forward observer, is still in play, which he is for a lot of the morning, he can call in 24 105 millimeter artillery pieces that more or less are pre-sighted beach. You got that in addition to all the other stuff you associate with the pillboxes and the mortars, and so it's just this wave of firepower that you're not ready for. You're coming in at low tide. 500, 600 yards, something like that, whatever it is. That's a long way. It's chaos. It's shocking, and so I thought that, and the other, and I was like you do with any book. I'm sure you rate this as much as anybody on earth. What's the first line going to be? Where do we start the book? What do we say first?
Yes.
And for me, it was like I thought, well, I've started. All the beauty of the world is gone. Because that's probably the way it would look to you right at that moment.
Right.
What could exist anywhere but this? And this really it sucks,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, it absolutely does. I got to know a guy called Walter Halloran. He was a. Did you meet this guy?
I didn't. I never met him. I know who he is.
Yeah, so he's with the camera, and he comes with two pigeons on his back, and one of them drowns. And he's the only guy to take any moving footage on the day of someone dropping. And one can see it on YouTube and all the rest of it. But he was fascinating about it all. The other two guys I got to know, I was really fortunate, was two identical twins, Tom and Dee Bowles, who were in the 18th Infantry, and they'd served in Algeria and Tunisia, Sicily. They'd been there, got the T-shirt. And when then were there, they were at this camp in Broadmain, just outside Dorchester, and landed on Easy Red. And I remember Tom Bowles saying that the USS Harding coming in really made their life a lot easier, because he took out this position.
And Carmick.
Right.
At WN65. Yeah, because that's where they would have been coming in. And so, like 18th Infantry, they're typically coming in on landing craft infantry, so very vulnerable with those sort of ramps or steps or whatever down the side of the landing craft and then into the water. So that's under shell fire, mortar shell.
Rather than machine gun fire by that stage.
Probably not machine gun fire, maybe some sniping or whatever. But still, you're like in a long line of very vulnerable people. And you don't need that pillbox at WN65 nuts on you at that point. So, when the destroyers come in, they do profound damage. There's a...
but those quick firing 4-inch guns and cannons that they're kind of putting on horizontally, I mean, they can put down a huge weight of fire as well. I mean, one of the things that kind of it just occurred to me yesterday is that, when we're looking at accounts of Allied veterans of World War II, they're always talking about, terrible 88s and German mortars and MGs and Hitler's buzzsaw and all the rest of it, and just how awful it is coming up against the Germans. But, of course, these guys have never faced themselves.
Right.
Imagine being a German. I mean, absolutely horrific, because you've got fighter cover as well. You've got them. I mean, one of the things I noticed about the Normandy campaign was when I was looking at German testimonies was just that on every page of every account, whether it be a diary, letter, memoir, or history, they just go on and on and on about the Yarbos, the fighter bombers, and you sort of think, wow, God, our guys didn't have to face with that.
They are. They're terrified of them.
Yeah.
All that firepower they're on the wrong end of.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
and they're constantly having to jump in a ditch. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as you're doing anything.
Exactly. Life is miserable that way.
It's absolutely miserable.
Yeah, but you know, there was a raging argument for decades as to who took out that pillbox of WN65.
Right. Was it Harding or was it?
Is it 467th?
Right.
Is it the? And to me, that's all pointless.
Yes.
Because it's basically a team effort with a bunch of people shooting at it in the course.
But I mean, but how close is the Harding when it comes in?
Well, about 1,000 yards.
Okay,
but
but
I would say Frankfurt does the most damage in my view.
But that 1,000 yards is nothing.
Oh, it's nothing.
It's
Yeah,
not even a
shoal
mile.
water.
That's what's that, 2/3 of a mile? Not even that.
Not even that. And so it's shoal water, so you can run aground.
Yeah.
And they don't know that there's no naval guns that are really going to hit them there. I mean, you know, they know there's a lot of bad things that can happen, and so yeah, they're putting pretty accurate fire in. And of course, you know, it's like that chipped part of the pillbox there. But you've also had anti-aircraft guns firing. You've had people firing bazookas. You've had all this kind of stuff go on.
Yeah.
So I believe personally, it's the combination of all that
quote,
persuades the Germans to get out of there.
Yeah. We should give full credit to the Allied naval gunnery because it's absolutely, well, just naval seamanship. I mean, it's absolutely exceptional, isn't it? Clearing all those mines. I mean, 255. It's the biggest mine-sweeping operation of the entire war, on the night of D-Day.
Right.
You know, with those swells, with those waves, at night in the dark. You know, rain coming down. I mean, what a nightmare job that must have been, and the whole fate of the entire invasion.
Right.
And it's just completely forgotten. No one ever mentions it.
I know. You just take it for granted.
Yeah, they do. And I think people take for granted the quality of gunnery. I mean, it is absolutely exceptional. And I was looking at one of the shells from probably HMS Ajax on the guns at Long-sur-Mer, and you can see it's gone straight through the shield, hit the main part of the gun. There's a big sort of bit of molten. And the spalling has just gone everywhere.
Yep.
That's one hell of a shot, isn't it? From kind of 5 miles out at sea. I mean, that's amazing.
You consider the arc and the windage and the mist.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a theory about the Allied navies because I think they're kind of underappreciated generally in World War II. But I think because there is this naval tradition both in the US, but in 1939. The Royal Navy is the biggest part of the armed forces, which is why it's called the senior service. In the US Navy is the biggest part of the armed services by country mile as well, proportionally.
Right.
And is in the best condition and best prepared and all the rest of it. And that's because you've got a two-ocean front in the USA. We're an island nation, so there is this heritage of sailing. There are enough people in the US, or enough people in Great Britain who know about reef knots and tides and so there is that kind of base knowledge, and because your navy is already quite big, in the case of Britain it's the kind of world's largest, in the case of the US it's one of the world's largest, you've got, when you need to suddenly rapidly expand, you've got a big enough force which you can spread through your rapidly increasing sized navies, which can then be filtered down to the new guys who are coming in, who quite a lot of them already have a base knowledge anyway. Which means that suddenly you've got this A1 Navy that is really good, which is lapping up the training and lapping up the lessons. And by 1944, they're just exceptional. The seamanship is exceptional, the gunnery is exceptional, the minesweeping is exceptional. And I think we underestimate just what an important part that plays. First of all, in clearing the Battle of the Atlantic, of course, goes without saying, with the Pacific as well, but also in the run-up to D-Day.
Well, and I mean, everything's predicated on it.
Isn't it?
The sea power is vital, because without it, the United States will not be able to project its power overseas. Simple as that.
Yes, and ditto the UK.
Right, exactly. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. Backing up all that is incredible industry. The shipbuilding industry.
Yes. Which is already there. You've already got that big, large-scale infrastructure, which means when you suddenly need to press the go button and really accelerate, you have the capacity to do it.
Absolutely. The go button takes it a long way. One of the things that the U.S. Navy has done in the Pacific by this point in time, not as much in Atlantic, but in the Pacific, is have forward logistics.
Right.
Oilers and tenders and this entire beans and bullets operation, which allows you to continue to operate forward under vast oceanic distances without having bases. And I view it as almost like the the naval equivalent of in-air refueling post-war, how it revolutionizes aerial operations. I think that's really incredible that you have that within about a one-year period, maybe?
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, how quickly those lessons are learned and how quickly they're implemented, which is the key thing.
Yeah.
I mean, really, really, truly remarkable. And actually, I mean, I call it big war. The Allied strategy and approach to war is like, I call it big war, because it's that long tail. It's that maintenance of the front. It's keeping those at the coalface of war to an absolute bare minimum. Of course, if you're a poor sod who's actually having to be at that coalface of war, like those guys in the big red one or whatever it might be, then it is obviously it's nightmarish. I mean, I think we're right in saying that if you're an infantryman or in a tank in Normandy on the Allied side, or indeed on the German side, your statistical chance of getting through is zero.
Yeah, you'll become a casualty at some point.
You will get a Purple Heart, or you will be wounded, or whatever.
Almost certainly. Well, the best example is the 29th Infantry Division. Let's say you're a D-Day guy in the 29th Division.
Yeah.
If you're still on your feet fighting at Saint-Lô a month later, you're a fugitive from the law of averages. Because the rifle companies have 100 to 150% casualty rates. So you do that math, it's pretty easy to see where this is going to go.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, it's why it really annoys me when the Allies get criticised for being slow and stodgy in Normandy. You just think, Jesus, you try going through those fields, or try going through those open plains around Caen. I mean,
that's so true.
Because you've got to take the leap of faith. You've got to goad the Germans out of their own foxholes. You've got to goad them into counterattacking so that you can then put your weight of fire onto them and trip them and grind them down. But someone's got to put the carrot in front of their nose.
Someone's got to put their butt on the line.
Yes.
And how many people are really going to do that?
Yeah, I mean...
And that is not a given. And that's often what I mean when I talk about the human will of war.
Yeah.
Of course the Allies have more stuff. Of course probabilities favor them. Of course there's a very good chance they're going to win. But they won't if you don't have enough people who are willing to put their butts on the line like that.
So how do you think World War II sits in US culture at the moment? I mean, you and I are over here with some Americans at the moment. I'd say, there's a few in their 50s, there's quite a lot in their 70s. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's because as you get older, you're more interested in the past, you've got time on your hands, you've got money in your pocket because you've hopefully had a half-decent career, and you've got the time to do it? So do you think subsequent generations will replenish those people?
Yeah, I do. And the reason I believe that is I see it in my students. Right. I see that excitement already in 20-year-olds, and many of them determined to come here to Normandy or elsewhere to look at these battlefields that Americans can't always get to quite easily. And they have it in their heads that they're excited about it and they want to learn about it. So I think it goes. But I also think there is a maturation process. Right. That leads to more interest in history, and like you said, more time later in life, a priority toward it. You do more reading, you learn more, you get more interested, and I think in the U.S. there's always a fixation on Normandy.
Yep.
As an iconic battlefield, and especially the D-Day landing beaches. I think there's, just my opinion, there's way too much fixation on Easy Company and the Band of Brothers. I would really like it if we could pull our lens back and look at other units and other experiences, though I understand why that was so compelling, and I think it's great that the story was told because it's generated interest, which is what matters. But I wish that there was a little more openness to look at other experiences as well.
Yeah. But do you think? So I mean, do you think the heritage of World War II is in a pretty good place? So you don't think it's in danger of being forgotten anytime soon?
I really don't think so. But I might be. Maybe I'm not the best person to ask because I'm so heavily involved in it.
Yeah,
and I see so much interest, and maybe that just warps my thinking. But I tell you, I think that Americans are constantly just absorbed with this, especially around anniversaries.
Yep.
This past year, the 75th of the Normandy invasion. I mean, it's just massive interest. It's just so cool. But there's also arguments that are still in play from World War II. And a lot of them have to do with the problems that are ongoing in American society of race and culture and gender and regionalism and all these and politics and government and all of this kind of stuff and how our economy has changed. I think some Americans worry that if we ever got another scrap like this, we wouldn't have the industrial base that we once did, because what's made in America anymore? What I mean? So I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I'm saying. The outsourcing of manufacturing and all that kind of stuff. So I've seen a lot of consternation over that.
Right.
And I think that some people would argue that Racially, we haven't changed enough. I think, that's a fair point too.
Yep.
So one of the reasons I think World War II is so incredibly important is the social transformation that comes about. And so, like in the U.S., for instance, there's a big argument between Civil War and World War II historians, which was the more significant war. Pointless argument, but fun.
Yeah.
And then Civil War, people are like, well, my God, it's the
defining moment of U.S. history.
Yeah, exactly. And it ends slavery, and it does this and that, and it keeps the Union together. Okay, yeah, that's great. But really, World War II is way more important, in my view, when we look at it from a racial point of view. If I'm an African American in the Civil War, all it's done for me is I'm not a slave anymore.
Right.
Now I got Jim Crow laws. Now I got black codes. Now I got racial subjugation that goes on through the better part of the next century.
Effective apartheid, yeah.
And so why does that begin to change? World War II. The civil rights movement doesn't just happen out of whole cloth.
No.
It's because of the forces unleashed by World War II that empowers and grows it, and you see the reverberations then, of course, famously in the 60s, but I think still with us today.
Yep.
So I think that's just one example
of the many legacies of World War II.
Many, yeah, and we're not even looking internationally,
no,
which of course is completely different USA.
Yep.
Militarily, economically,
globally, and just in every single way.
Every way, yeah. So I think to me, Civil War is just a warm-up for and that's me. I teach a Civil War class, but World War II I see as more significant.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I sort of thought about it in those terms, but yeah, the social mobility that happens as a result of the Second World War, certainly around the world, is obviously huge. Huge amount of displaced people in Europe at the end of the war was absolutely just appalling. But in the UK, things really, really changed. They really did. First Labour government's healthcare system and all the rest of it coming in as a direct result of World War II. Multiculturalism. Lots of officers being commissioned, from lower class backgrounds, which would, was sort of happening in the First World War, but then completely abandoned again. But there's not the kind of turning back of the clock that was in 1919, in 1946. So it is really, really interesting, really interesting. Now listen, before we stop, I've just got to ask you, okay, so we've been giving Gavin a bit of a hard time about the bridge over Nijmegen. Why didn't he go straight to the bridge rather than getting the heights first? Because if you lose the heights, you might lose the whole operation, but if you don't get the bridge, you're definitely going to lose the operation. So why is it? Because R.G. Poulsen, who's this friend we've discovered in Nijmegen, he got me a little bit half cut, it has to be said, in a pub in Nijmegen with that kind of strong Dutch beer. But he argues that Gavin made a mistake and it wasn't, Browning gave him looser instructions, and actually it was up to him to kind of decide how he deployed his troops. But you're a defender of Gavin, and that's good.
I am, and all due respect to RG.
I just want to hear it.
I've written a whole book about the American role in Market Garden called September Hope.
Yep. Very good it is too.
Thank you. I would say, all due respect to RG, Gavin did prioritize the bridge. He told Colonel Lindquist to send a battalion there. He told him exactly the route to send him there and to go and grab that bridge as quickly as he could, while of course he still has to deal with the Groesbeck Heights, plus he's got to deal with Grave. So the mission itself that he's been given is incredibly ambitious, shall we say?
For a single division.
For a single division, especially without its glider infantry element.
Right.
He's not going to have for several days.
So it's underarmed.
It's definitely, and so right there he's kind of up against it, and so maybe someone would say, well, excuses. Okay, I get that, but I would say Gavin did tell his subordinate to go and do precisely what RG has suggested should be done correctly, I think, and he took the wrong route,
right,
and this led to greater resistance, and this led to, a longer time to grab the bridges.
But there are question marks over Lindqvist anyway, because there's always this kind of feeling that he's a bit more of a kind of sort of natural pen pusher rather than an action man.
Somewhat.
Because there's that time in Normandy where he's got Mark Alexander as XO, his second in command, and Lindqvist is the guy in charge. And you kind of logic suggests it should be the other way around, because Alexander is this hugely experienced fighting combat man who all the guys love, and his reputation just goes before him.
Yeah, that's right.
Out of all your units that you've got, is Lindqvist unit the right one to send to the bridge?
Probably not, but that comes down to the drop zones, I suppose, and who's right there and who's available at any given time.
Right.
So I suppose we could quibble with that, but the 504th has a...
And that's because it's all done in a massive hurry.
It is. It got 1 week. I mean, I think in some ways Market Garden is brilliant in that sense that you only had 1 week to prepare this incredible operation.
Which actually almost works.
Well, right.
Exactly. I know. I mean, when Monty says it's 90% successful, I mean that's kind of pushing it. But you see what he means. I mean, they are. It is just one bridge too far. I mean, it is. That's the truth of it.
I think Monty's phrase is so funny. And what I always say in response is that's like saying you're sort of pregnant. I mean, you are or you're not. You either succeed or you don't. But it's
I know.
True.
But
close. But at the same time, Gavin puts a 504 on Grave because nothing's going to happen if you don't have someone to rescue you. So what's the point of the Nijmegen Bridge if you don't have the link to everybody else?
Well, I mean, every bridge has to be taken and held.
Yeah.
And the Grave Bridge is interesting because obviously they have guys at both ends, so they secure both ends, which you don't do. Is there ever a reason why they don't have people dropped north of the Nijmegen?
Well, because you're worried about them getting completely destroyed and cut off. That's precisely what happened to Frost people.
Yeah.
And no paratrooper wants to be dropped in a built-up area.
No.
So that really doesn't make sense. And Julian Cook was kind of angry at Gavin. When Julian Cook has the famous mission on the boats to go across the Vaal and all that, and he's kind of like, well, General, if you wanted people on the other side there, why don't you just drop them there?
Yeah.
And that's the way a paratrooper is going to think, of course. Right. But a division commander...
And there are houses on the other side.
Yeah, there are houses on the other side.
So it's still built up on the other side. Not to the extent.
Yeah, not quite as much like the downtown area, but it's not a good place to drop unless you're going to get farther out of town, and then you end up with the same problem that the 1st Airborne Division has at Osterbeck.
Right.
How are we going to get there then? And so there's no good answer. It's a flawed mission. It's a zero defect operation. Right. Everything's got to go right for it to matter. And so I think Gavin's under the gun. And even indeed, the day that they crossed the Vaal, Gavin has to spend a lot of his day dealing with crises on the Groesbeck Heights.
Of course.
So I think that's a microcosm for the dilemma he has. So I hate to lay it all on Lindquist, I suppose. In the end, Gavin's responsible, I suppose. But I think also, too, let's say those guys get there. They're going to run smack into the SS units.
Yep.
10th SS coming the other way.
Right.
So are they really going to control the bridge?
Yep.
Does it matter that much at that point until everybody else is linked up with you? Till Guards Armored has come up and all that. So I think that, to me... and
I suppose the other thing to remember, of course, is that the Reichswald, which borders the Groesbeck Heights, the British get completely clogged down there till February.
Right, exactly.
I mean, it is the Hurtgen Forest of 21st Army Group. So it's
tough place to fight.
It's a tough place to fight.
It really is. And and the other thing too, you don't have your glider infantry. So right there, you lost about 1/4 of your combat power.
Yep.
So.
Okay, my last question for you: favorite general of World War II?
Huh.
Yeah, just not necessarily because he's the best, just because the guy you like. Is it Hubner or Terry Allen or?
No, I mean it might.
Or is it Gavin?
It's a tie. I'm such a weenie. But, right now, it's a tie between Gavin, who I think I like on a lot of levels. I think he's an excellent combat commander. I think he has a strong sense of ethics. He's the first commander of any stature in the U.S. Army to advocate desegregation. So he anticipates the future.
Yeah, big tick for that.
Yeah, very much so. He's a historian. He's a frustrated historian. So
right.
As an historian, the Gavin papers are incredible.
Yeah.
So he's thought ahead to help us, later.
Yeah.
And I just think he is what a combat commander should be, and he's what an individual should be in terms of how he comports himself. But he's kind of tied with Robert Eichelberger, who's in the Pacific Theater.
Yeah.
And I think is the best U.S. commander that hardly anybody's ever heard of.
Yep.
He does remarkable things in the Pacific. In New Guinea, he wins the first American ground victory at Buna.
Yep.
He does.
Well, we were touching on Buna the other day. We were having a conversation about that. But
yeah, we were talking about that. But and then he does remarkable things at Biak and the Philippines, and
right.
And again, pretty good guy, I think personally.
Yep. And what about Simpson?
I think Simpson is underappreciated.
I do too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Simpson is a fine commander.
Okay, well, that's another whole conversation that we had as well. Wilson John, thanks. That's, really, really interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks, James.